Do you agree with permanent modifications to your equipment, whether it be a lawnmower, blower, or string trimmer? What I'm talking about are changes or adjustments to an engine or a different part of the machine that will affect it in a serious way. Some viewers are going to know exactly what I'm talking about, but for others, it may not be a big deal. In today's video, we're going to be talking about modifications to your equipment that in your eyes makes them run or function better. And while we talk about that topic, I'll show you the repairs I made to this particular machine in the background. But if for some reason you're more interested in the video that's playing in the background, then there should be a link to it so you can watch it. Otherwise, it'll give you something to watch as we talk about some of the modifications I've seen or was told about by other people. The way I'm going to talk about these mods is to start with the easy ones first and then make our way down to the harder ones. The first modification I want to start with is something most all consumers are capable of doing, and that is taking off parts to make their job easier. The best example of this type of modification is when consumers take off the deflector or cover for the side discharge on their mowers. The cover is placed over the discharge when you want to mulch the clippings, but on some models you can lift that cover out of the way. And instead, place a deflector in its place, that way you don't run the risk of a rock coming out of the chute and damaging something. Of course, there's still mowers out there that are only designed to discharge, so it only has the one chute, which kind of limits what you can do with it. And if you're not sure where I'm going with this statement, it's the permanent removal or modification of this part of the mowing deck. What I find most times is that the cover that allows you to mulch the clippings has been taken off and never put back on. But the same goes for the discharging type mowers who have had their side chutes welded closed for permanent mulching of the clippings. So why would someone want to permanently close off that side chute then? Well, that's pretty simple. They don't want to discharge the grass clippings anymore. However, that is just a guess, so you'd have to ask them as to the reason why, because I'm pretty sure they had a pretty good reason. But what I find out in most cases is that the mower was designed for cutting down heavily overgrown areas where discharging is needed to keep from clogging the mowing deck. And over time, it may not be needed for that kind of usage anymore, but instead it's used for weekly cutting on a small suburban lot. I don't know when the last time you used that kind of discharging type mower in that kind of setting, but it makes for a huge mess with all the clippings. But I can remember as a kid using a discharge type mower on our own lawn, and it was an absolute mess. It required a lot of raking of the clippings and eventually ended with clearing the clippings out of the street and the concrete areas as well. In fact, the first time we had a lawnmower that didn't have a side chute and was just a bagger, I was quite concerned as to how the mower was going to work properly. But on that very mower, it had a rear chute door that either allowed you to bag the grass or close it to mulch it. But I guess that style was much too expensive for manufacturers to keep producing, so the mowers since then have gone with the more traditional side cover instead. So what's the problem with consumers taking off the side covers or the chutes and sometimes welding them closed then? To be honest, there's really nothing wrong with it. I mean, it is their lawnmower, and if they want to make changes to it, then be my guest. However, it's when they try to get rid of it and I end up picking it up is when I have a problem with it. The main reason why I have an issue with it is that now I have to undo what the previous owner did just so that I can sell it as if it was from the factory. Just think about it. If you were in the market for a piece of equipment, I'd hope you'd like it not customized to the previous owner's needs. So for me, if I get a lawnmower and it's missing the discharge chute or it's been cut up to pieces, I have to replace it to make it more acceptable to more buyers. Yes, I'm pretty sure there are those out there that don't mind buying a mower with a missing cover over the discharge. But I'd rather not find out how tough it would be to sell it when compared to one with the cover. So you might be thinking that I'm being a bit particular about what I sell, and you would be correct. So let's move on to the next possible modification and see if you change your mind about my perspective. The next item is a big red flag for me when picking up stuff to fix and flip, and that's another safety system, the brake handle. The brake handle on a mower is meant to be a safety device. What it does is two things. It applies a flywheel brake to stop the engine as fast as possible, and it acts as a switch for the ignition system. The parts of the system are the brake handle, the cable for it, and of course the parts I mentioned on the engine portion. But what I find sometimes is that the cable will be stuck and the owner will bypass the safety system on it, and instead relying on an improvised switch on the handle or even just pulling on the spark plug wire to stop the engine. Unfortunately, I cannot sell a mower that's set up in this fashion because I don't want to be the one responsible for someone else getting hurt. Now, it's one thing if it was already set up like that when I got it, whether it was something that I'm working on for someone else or if I found it that way. But if I decide to sell it, I like knowing that it's about as safe as it's going to be from the factory. You of course do not have to agree with me, and I'm okay with it because that is your choice and I can respect it. But besides the safety aspect, are there other mods that I'm concerned with? And the answer is yes, there are. The next modification is something that I've done before with varying degrees of success and would only recommend it if you're willing to take the risk. This would be modifying the carbs on any type of machine, specifically in terms of trying to tune it. This has come up more than once, and most times it's when the engine might be running lean on fuel. And to make up for it, some would recommend drilling the main fuel jet out for more fuel flow to the engine. But here's the problem. You need to figure out how much larger you need to make the opening in the fuel jet. Because if you do it wrong, you could cause the carb to deliver too much fuel to the engine, which could have some undesirable effects. So yes, you can drill the fuel jet out to a larger size if you feel that's what it needs, but understand that there's a lot of risk involved. But if you're still having running problems after drilling the jet out, then you might have to replace the carb. The reason I know this is because it's happened to me before. I thought drilling out the fuel jet would make it run better, and unfortunately, it didn't. I then had to replace the modified carb with a new one, and after that, it fixed the problem the engine was having. So even with all the experience that I had at the time, I still made a risky choice that didn't pan out. And with the carbs being as affordable as they are right now, I would always recommend that you take the safer route unless you're on a razor-thin budget. Another safety device that I find to be removed from a lot of machines is the guard for the trimmer head on string trimmers. Believe me, I don't like them either, as they can sometimes get in the way. But I also like the glass on my cars and my house not to be broken, not to mention I only have 2 eyes. The strange part is that most consumers who are looking to buy a used string trimmer don't seem to mind having those guards missing. That means 100% of the time when I find the guards missing, I don't bother replacing them. And if for some reason the buyer doesn't want the trimmer I'm selling because it doesn't have a guard on it, I'll then offer them a different one that does have one. So that brings up a good question. Would you buy a mower that's missing the side cover or a trimmer that's missing the guard? Now personally, this is a very tough question for me to answer, but for the trimmer, I would like for it to have one, but it's not needed just so long as I'm getting a good deal on it. Basically what I'm saying is, I don't want to buy an almost brand new Echo SRM 225 for near full price if it's missing it. If that was the case, I would just buy a brand new one instead, because the cost to replace the guard would make it pretty much the same price as a new one. It's kind of the same for the mower. Just so long as it's really cheap, then I can afford to replace the missing part. But in the case for the lawnmower, I would definitely insist that the cover be replaced. It's pretty much based on the asking price of each machine, but I would still factor in the replacement cost in each case. So for the last couple of items, I'm not going to go in great detail in, but generally speaking, I'd like for all the wheels on a lawnmower I'm selling or even buying to be the same, no mismatching. I personally had this come up in a sale where the buyer gave me the criteria for the mower they were wanting to purchase. And after 1 week, I had the mower ready for them, but once they saw the mismatched wheels that were on it, they passed on the purchase. So I was kind of taken back by the whole situation, but I can see their point. Some consumers are just really picky, and you can't blame them. I mean, it is their money, and it's their choice on what they spend it on. So after the sale fell through, I brought the mower back home and then looked up a new set of wheels for it, installed them, and then put the same mower back up for sale. The only thing was, I had to increase the asking price for the mower by the cost of the wheels, so I was a bit worried that no one would buy it. But it only took a couple of days and a new buyer paid the full asking price for it. So was having mismatched wheels on a lawnmower that big of a deal? Well, to some people, it might be a deal breaker. Now, I haven't mentioned leaf blowers just yet, so I might as well get them out of the way. The biggest gripe I have with them is not modifications, but missing blower tubes. What happens is that the lower blower tube will be missing when I go and pick these up. And depending upon what you're using the blower for, the lower tube might not be needed, but if you're going to use it for leaf blowing, having the lower tube is quite essential because it seems to work a whole lot better with it. But if you're only using your blower for grass clippings, then I can see why you would get rid of it. Now there is one strange aspect when selling equipment online, and that is the buyer could be expecting to get not only the entire machine, but all the accessories with it, whether they need it or not. So sometimes when I'm selling a blower without the lower tube, someone asks me if it comes with it, and unfortunately I tell them no, it's sold as is. The same thing goes for lawnmowers. Some will ask me if it comes with a grass catcher, and I'll tell them the same thing. Sorry, it's sold as is. I don't blame them, as they want to get all they can for the asking price, so I have no issues if they do ask for more. In fact, I've even done the same thing when picking up free items, and most times I walk away with only what was shown in the ad, but I figured it was worth asking. So here's the lesson I've learned so far. You're free to do whatever you want with your machine. You can cut it up and modify it to fit all your needs. However, just be careful if you sell it or even give it away. And just realize that not everyone wants your machine that you've customized, as it may not fit their needs. So open up that jet if you think it's going to help out your engine, and take off that chute if it's in your way. And do what you need to do to your blower and trimmer because only you realize what works best for you. All I know is that I'll just have to deal with it once it gets into my hands, and it's just something I'll have to get used to while doing this kind of hobby. So my question is, have you ever made a permanent modification to one of your machines before? And if so, what was it and how did it turn out? Thank you for watching. I really do appreciate your time here. Please feel free to ask me any questions about this project or about your own projects, and I hope to see you in the next video.